All right. Well, hello everyone. Thanks for joining tonight. We are going to be talking about financing strategies for your farm, focusing on grants and loans. And as Stephanie will mention, grants and loans are a good way to move forward in your business to like tackle an exciting project or idea that you have. So the question that I wanted to ask everyone before we got into the presentation is, what is a project or let me pull it up, exciting project or goal that you have for your farm business? And if you want to just quickly introduce yourself, where your farm is located, and then one thing you're looking forward to. And I won't call on anyone, but if you feel called, go ahead and just answer.
This is Robert Barfield, and I am building a greenhouse in my garage, and I got it almost done. And then I have 4 web cameras in there that people can see the progress when I get it all wired. I got the cameras in there, but I don't have them wired yet. And I'm going to broadcast it on my web so that people can see how to grow lettuce and tomatoes. And my small business development person said that would, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So that's what I'm hoping to do.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Well, hi everybody. It's good to see you, Stephanie. Haven't seen you for a while. Wow, we've got a list. So just getting started this year and creating success with the nursery, and then building a second enterprise with the produce. And there's just so many things that we can update. One of the things I'd like to see is a water system out here. We've seen a lot of snow and water run off the high tunnel, and I just think that it would be really cool to be able to reuse some of that someday. There's a few other projects on the list too, but I think that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for sharing. And I'm going to read Katie's response that she put into the chat. So Katie says that she has a small produce farm in southwestern North Dakota and is looking forward to purchasing our own land in the next couple of years. That's so exciting. And hopefully you'll learn about possibly a grant or a loan that could help you with all of these projects in the next couple of years. So that is all I had for check-in questions. We have Stephanie here, which I think all of you know, but Stephanie's the executive director of farms. So she is in charge of all of the finances for farms, but also has experience in the past professionally and personally with grant writing. So I'm super excited that you were able to join us, Stephanie. And if you have any issues, let me know. I'll keep watching the chat or whatever else you need.
Great. Well, I'm very excited to be here today. And I think Felicity and I will co-facilitate this session tonight. But yeah, so we have, how do I get grants for my business is the number one question that we get at farms. We probably get that question, just since January 1st, I think we've been asked it from about 6 different farmers, maybe. And this is, you've been taking you are either taking farm beginnings now, or you've taken it in the past. You've created this plan to design your business, think through all the details. And now how do you pay for that? And so that's what this session is about. So we're going to talk about the differences between grants and loans, are you ready to apply for grants and loans? And are they, when are grants a good fit? When are loans a good fit? We've got a short list of some grants that we'll walk through with you. We have a much longer list of loans that we'll skim through with you. The one key thing I want you to take away from this session is that you don't have to know it all. And so Farms is building out a one-on-one technical assistance program. So I would encourage you all to reach out to us. We can set you up. As we're building out this program, the goal is to set you up with a technical assistance person, which would be either me or Jennifer, and we would walk you through this process. So giving you an overview tonight, but don't worry if it seems like a lot of information. You're not expected to know it all or even know how to write a grant when you're done with this presentation. That's more than would fit in 2 hours. But I want you to remember, you can reach out to us and we will walk you through the process, connect you with others. So I'm going to share my screen. Shelby made some beautiful PowerPoint slides for me tonight. Here we go. Oh, and also, this is a conversation tonight. Don't be afraid to interrupt with questions. This session is for you. I want you to get the most possible out of it. So, you know, if you want clarification on something or you want to know a little more about something, I'm happy to stop and talk through those questions. I love it when presentations are a conversation and everybody, that way I know that everybody's getting what they came here for. Oh. Haven't used PowerPoint in a while. We're so used to using Canva. Here we go. Okay, financing your farm business, loans and grants. So when we're done today, there are 3 things that I really want you to take home from this session. I want you to have a greater appreciation for the value of budgeting, financial planning, and record keeping and how they can help you. I'm sure you already have a great appreciation for it after all the great sessions you've had. But if possible, an even greater appreciation. The second thing I want you to take away is that grants and loans are tools. Just like any tool, they're useful when applied to the right purpose. They're useless when applied to the wrong purpose. So they're not a be-all, end-all solution, but they're a tool that can really help you when used in the right way. And finally, most importantly, you do not have to go it alone. You do not have to remember everything we say tonight. Just do remember that we're here to help, and we have a one-on-one technical assistance program where we will work with you over the long term to support you through the process of refining your business plan and finding and applying for that financing. So, okay, so the difference between grants and loans. We'll just start with the basics. Grants are a one-time infusion of funds for a specific purpose or project. They do not have to be paid back, but you must use the funds as you said you would. You must complete the activities you promised and submit reports and receipts, proving that you did what you said you did. There are very few grants. You usually will not be able to get a grant for operating money. So they're for specific purposes like equipment or infrastructure or marketing. You will need an identified plan for the use of the funds. You will need to describe your business, and you may need to provide financials to show that you're solvent. Grants are seldom offered without a required matching investment from you, the applicant. So if you're applying for $10,000, you might need to contribute $10,000 of your own money to the project. And there may be restrictions on what you can and can't do with the items purchased with grant funds. Loans do have to be paid back and with interest. You will need, like grants, you'll need an identified plan for use of the funds. You'll need to provide extensive information about your business, and you'll need to have a clear plan for how you're going to repay that loan. With grants, you likely need to provide match. With loans, you will likely need to provide collateral. So if an entity provides a loan to a farmer to purchase a trailer, they might put a lien on that trailer as collateral. So you don't own that trailer until the loan is paid off. The lender may still want documentation on how the lender will likely want documentation on how you spent the loan funds. And the lender's main concern is your ability to repay the loan and interest in a timely manner. And they're going to want to see financials and documentation showing your financial plan and how capable you are to repay that loan in a timely manner. So there's some similarities between the two. In both cases, you need to have a clear plan. You need to clearly state how you're going to use the funds, and you need to be able to provide extensive information about your business. And you need to have some investment of your own. And I had some examples here of, for grants, there might be restrictions on what you can and can't do with the items you've purchased. And by that, I mean, one example is Farms got a small grant from a printing company called 4Imprint to purchase branded water bottles. Because we purchased those water bottles with a grant, we can't sell those water bottles. They have to be used for promotions and giveaways. Another example is USDA Rural Development has rural business enterprise grants that can be used for purchase of equipment. But if your business, say your business goes under, and now you want to sell that equipment, you have to pay the money back to rural development. You can't just sell that equipment and keep the money. So you have to be aware of the restrictions. So the next slide is, what we want to help you think through tonight is, are you ready to apply for loans and grants? And that is really what the whole process of creating your whole farm plan has been about. If you've created a thorough, detailed whole farm plan, you may be ready. You may have answered all the questions. So some of the questions are, do you have a very clear idea of what you're going to grow and market, and when and where and how you will market it? Do you have a clear idea of all of your expenses? What will you need for your business? All the things you'll need. And what will all those things cost? So that you have a clear idea of your total expenditures. Are your goals reasonable? Are you confident you can complete the activities you're proposing and spend the money in the ways stated? Because you're going to be held accountable to do those things. You're going to have to submit detailed reports and documentation, including receipts. Which brings us to, do you have the capacity to keep careful records and submit reports and documentation, such as hour logs, receipts, etc.? Will you be able to make the loan payments? Or if it's a grant, do you have the matching funds required? Okay. I'm going to stop sharing because I prefer to see you all, although most of the screens are turned off. So just pause there and see what questions are coming up.
Maybe I'm jumping ahead, but you asked for questions. How do
Yeah.
you find out about grants and appropriate ones? What's the best way to do that? I'm sure there are several ways. If you could delve into that.
And that's a great segue into where we're going next. It's perfect. So we have put together a list of some grants that we found that are appropriate for farmers. And we're going to go through them together and talk about the requirements, especially the eligibility requirements, and the purpose, the funder's stated purpose for those. In terms of finding other grants beyond that, you could do a Google search, or you could come to us at Farms and we can help you look. We also have put together a bunch of resources for finding loans, and there are a lot of loans from local economic development councils and planning councils that are designed for helping rural businesses grow and have, very favorable terms. The other thing I forgot to mention is that I have a sort of a case study. It's actually a value-added producer grant that I wrote and was awarded for my business, Meadowlark Granary, back in 2015. Yeah, 2015. And so we'll spend part of our time walking through that so you can see firsthand some of the challenges and how I address them and some of the things to think about. So now, Felicity, this is where we should have touched base beforehand. We've got, do you have some of the web pages up?
So I have slides with some of the grants that we went through and then links to the websites. So we can either kind of quickly go through all of those and then spend more time on the specific grants that people have questions on.
Yeah.
Or, okay.
I think that would be a good idea.
All right. Yeah. So we spent some time compiling different grants that fit for small farms specifically. So I will go ahead and share my screen here and hopefully present. Okay. So I'm going to walk through these quickly. I have more information on each one, but again, feel free to ask any questions that come up as we're kind of talking about what these grants are and what they're for. So the first one I have is actually the Value Added Producer Grant. This grant is for helping agricultural producers enter value-added activities to generate new products, create and expand marketing opportunities, and increase producer income. This is a program through USDA Rural Development. And so some examples of activities would be using flour, milling it and turning it into bread, or using milk and making that into some sort of like goat milk into soaps. I'm trying to think of some other examples, but anything. Oh,
I'm going to chime in here. So this grant is for any instance where you are adding value to something that you grow. And yes, the most common examples would be turning wheat into flour, baking mixes and bread, turning berries into jam. But also think about if you are growing vegetables, then you wash them, pack them, label them, and market them. That is also adding value. So what you would be, so this grant, they would not pay for, say, a tractor or a hoe or seeds. They won't pay for anything related to production, but they would pay for labeling, packaging, developing a website. They might pay for you to hire an assistant to help with the marketing and the packaging and the selling. So it's really, it's not, they will not pay for production, but they want to pay for activities that add value, which tend to be more towards the marketing side. And this is the one that we'll go through in more depth, simply because it's the one that I've actually have experience with myself, with my own business.
Okay, and I'll share, these slides are up in the portal for people who are taking Farm Beginnings right now, but I can share them with the rest of you too. And so I linked on each slide just to the web page about that grant. So I will just pull that up quickly.
Oh, I think Mary has a question.
Mary.
It talks about planning grants versus working capital grants. Could you, when it says planning, does that mean that we haven't started and we think we might need assistance putting our ideas together in order to be value added?
So I would have to dig back into the RFA to really get a grasp on that. But I believe a planning grant, for example, would be if you're going to hire a consultant to do a feasibility study for your proposed business.
All right.
That would be a planning grant.
And that was the USDA rural development one, right?
Yeah, value-added producer grants are part of USDA rural development.
Okay. Are you going to talk about Sam's and Dunn's at any point?
I sure can. Yeah.
And we can do that towards the end as we need.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, so if you click here and let me know if it stays on the PowerPoint or if it can you see the website?
Still on the PowerPoint.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna reshare. So this link just takes you to the website from Rural Development, and I have it linked there, which is a good place to start for looking into eligibility and different types of projects that would or wouldn't be allowed. So then you can go through and see if you fall into any of these priority categories, if you are a beginning farmer, if you are a small sized farm, which I think everyone here would fit into that category. So looking into this, and then also okay. I have a question, Katie, about building an on-farm store.
Usually these grants won't pay for buildings. So they might pay for rent if you're renting a facility, but and again, I'd have to double check, but generally, and there will be a list of allowable and unallowable expenditures buried somewhere in these regulations. So it's, I'm gonna say probably not for the buildings. And I do have an exam, in the loans resources, I have basically what it was, someone reached out asking about grants for a grocery store and cafe. And I turned to Denise Sundin at USDA Rural Development, and she sent back a long email full of resources, mostly loans. And we've uploaded the text of that email because of all the good links in there. But buildings, you're gonna more likely have better success applying for loans.
Let me pull this back up quickly. So we can come back to this one. I just wanted to also put in here that this grant requires 100% match. So that can be a barrier for some people. That means that any amount that you are being awarded in this grant, you need to match with your own money toward that same project. So just wanted to note that part in here before we move on.
And I
And
want
then
to add
go ahead.
something here, just to manage expectations. Although we are going to cover the value added producer grant in more depth because we have the sample application for that one, with the due date of May 11th, if you're thinking about applying for this grant, I would encourage you to maybe be thinking about applying next year, simply because you're going to see my application was 41 pages, and that was without the appendices and additional documents. So it is a big project to write it, and that's after you've got all the planning work put together. So it might be a bit of a tight timeline for May 11th. Possible, but difficult. So just wanting to manage expectations.
And the first few grants I have on here are more of the larger federal grants, but we have some foundation grants too that we'll talk about at the end that will be a little bit less of a undertaking. Okay, so I am going to move on. The next grant that I wanted to touch on is the Ag Products Utilization Commission grant from the North Dakota Department of Agriculture. The goal, or commonly referred to as APUC, so if you've heard people talking about APUC grants, this is what we're talking about. The goal is to create new wealth and employment opportunities through the development of new and expanded uses of North Dakota's agricultural products. There are some specific categories for this that we will talk through, so you could identify specifically where a project on your farm might fit. And so as far as amount of funding for this project, they don't have any stated limits, but it just depends on the overall funding pool that year. And you are required to come up with a 25% match. So it's not a 1-for-1 like the last grant we were talking about, but you will need to match this with some of your own funds. And these are accepted quarterly. So I have due dates here on the bottom. So these are something that you could work on and maybe shoot for the July date. And if you don't make it, you could then, try again in October.
Did you have a slide on the examples? I pulled up their annual report if people are interested in some examples of what this grant can be used for.
I didn't have a slide on examples, but we can pull it up if
I'll just take screen sharing
Mhm.
back. So some examples, and the farm diversification portion of this grant is probably the best fit for most of you, although there are the research one is more for like NDSU faculty. But so for example, Cows and Co Creamery, if you've ever been to Carrington and had their gelato and cheese, they got $148,000 from APUC to start producing cheese. They were already producing gelato and they wanted to expand and produce cheese. I'm not sure what, this just gives very brief summaries. It doesn't talk about what they use the money specifically for, but we heard Marcia speak at NPSAS, and she mentioned getting a grant to pay someone to develop a website for them when they rebranded. So that's one example. 701 Meats got $97,650. Quant Barn, Food First Biotin Bar, probiotin bars. So there's some very large ones here. Derek Lostutter, who is a farmer that has worked with farms, he got $49,000 to build a deep winter greenhouse. And the other thing to be aware of with the APUC grants is you need a fiscal agent, but Farms is certified as a fiscal agent for APUC grants, which means we went down to Bismarck, we went through a training, and we can be fiscal agents. So, for example, when Derek was awarded his grant, we were his fiscal agent. The North Dakota Department of Agriculture then mails the check to Farms. Derek, of course, had to do the activities first. That's another thing to be aware of with grants. And we should spend some time talking about that. These are reimbursement based, which means you have to have the money and do the spending, and then submit your receipts and documentation, and then they give you the money. So you have to have the money first in order to get the grant. And so as a fiscal agent, those funds get passed through Farms. Any questions about APUC? I'll stop sharing so Felicity can advance.
The next program is one that Mary, you will probably be quite familiar with. So if you have comments on this as we're going through it, feel free to hop in. The next one is, oh, never mind. I thought this was EQIP. We'll go over that since I led into it. There's another USDA program. This is USDA EQIP grants, which, if I say it right, is Environmental Quality Incentive Program.
You got it.
Awesome. So this grant is focused on helping agricultural producers with conservation practices. So it will pay financial assistance toward implementing some sort of conservation practice on your farm. An example of a farmer who has received an EQIP grant is Lori Martin, who is pictured in the slide. One of the acceptable activities is putting a high tunnel or hoop house in your up on your farm. So that is one that some North Dakota vegetable producers have taken advantage of.
And I'll add that Farms has a small loan program, and because these EQIP grants are reimbursement based, meaning again, you have to have the money to purchase the high tunnel, and then NRCS will reimburse you. But sometimes farmers are like, well, I don't have the money up front to purchase the high tunnel. So then they come to Farms and they take out a small farms loan so that they can purchase the high tunnel. They're reimbursed by the grant, and then they can pay the loan back. And it has worked very well for several farmers.
And the best way to kind of figure out your eligibility on this is to just talk to your local NRCS agent, and they will walk you through this. But they do accept applications year round, but they might batch them into specific cutoff dates. But talk to your local agent and they will help you walk through what is or isn't applicable and how to get that process started.
Felicity,
yeah.
I'd like to add that
Mhm.
if you've never participated with USDA, one of the first things you need to do after contacting NRCS is get your farm service agency farm and track number. And that can sometimes be daunting for small farmers, especially if you're in a town or Bismarck or around Minot, because they've dealt with traditional farmers. So please don't hesitate to reach out first to Farms, I suppose, but I'd put my name, Stephanie and Felicity, please just have people contact me, and I'll be that personal contact, that relationship that says, you know, it's okay. This is, you know, you sometimes have to be persistent, and sometimes the language is different. So it can be daunting for a lot of new farmers or new to USDA. Just holler.
Thank you so much, Mary. Those relationships are so important.
Okay, and I will again quickly pull this up. For some reason it wants me to stop sharing and then reshare. This is the website for it, and so it has their current kind of cutoff date here, but again, like Mary said, go in, talk to people, which is going to be the best way. But it goes over some of the eligibility requirements on here that you can go through, and then there also is some set aside for beginning farmers and veteran farmers and socially disadvantaged farmers. So I think many of you will fall into that. So just keep that in mind as you are researching these. Okay, any other questions about EQIP and how to qualify for that or how to get started?
I just want to point something out. Like, we just saw that the EQIP deadline was February 3rd. And we're going to see that most of the grants we look at tonight, the deadlines have passed. So just be aware of that, you know. So really this presentation is about preparing you to apply next year, and we will likely hold another presentation like this maybe in January of next year, or the end of the growing season, at that winter time slot when you have more time to prepare applications.
Okay. I am going to move on to the next grant program that I have here. This is another bigger grant. This is the North Central SARE Farmer and Rancher Grant. The purpose of this grant is to support producers who are protecting natural resources, enhancing communities, and boosting profitability, which is kind of vague. So we can kind of go over some examples of that too. These grants max out for individuals at $15,000 and then at $30,000 for a group. For this one, there is no match requirement, but it is again a reimbursement-based grant, so it's something that you would have to have funds for a project first, and then you would get reimbursed for it. The dates, again, this is kind of a usually, because usually they will call for proposals in August, and then your proposals would be due in December, and then the decisions are made over the spring, and the funds would be awarded to you in time for the growing season. And yes, we did do a whole, well, Stephanie did a whole webinar about SARE Farmer Rancher grants, and you had a couple producers who were awarded one. Okay.
And that webinar is at farms.org/webinars. You have to scroll all the way down to the bottom. And we had Derek Lowstutter and Amber Lockhart and Megan Mahoney, each talking about their Farmer Rancher grant, the experience of writing it and implementing it. And then we had Claire Keene, who was with NDSU Extension in and working with SARE at the time, who went through the ins and outs. So this grant is really great if you have an interest in doing any type of on-farm research. And I think Felicity mentioned that Jake, you were interested in some of that. And when you go to the SARE webpage, they have an entire database of all the previously funded proposals. You will be able to see a summary and then a longer form of what they did, because part of the project is you have to complete an end of project report. So for example, Ross and Amber Lockhart got a Farmer Rancher grant to test the efficacy of 3 different methods of controlling cabbage looper moths. They were having bad problems with cabbage looper moths on the brassicas. And so they tried one row with, I think, that row cover cloth. And they tried one row with marigolds, and I can't remember the other flower, but, companion planting with flowers on either side. So as it's on-farm research, you also have to be prepared to set aside a little bit of your growing space for that project. And, if the method you choose fails, you might not be able to sell those cabbages. You might find that they prefer your test plot. Derek Lowstutter used the SARE Farmer Rancher grant to help fund the deep winter greenhouse, because he was testing these like heat sink tiles or something. It was a method of heat collection in a deep winter greenhouse that was passive solar. And then Megan Mahoney is a beekeeper from Jamestown, and she was actually engaged in breeding queen bees. So hers was more technical. So those are some examples.
I think it's really good to think about if you are the type of person that is always trying to problem solve on your farm and try new things and different methods, then a SARE grant or another research type grant might be a good fit for you. If you are really into, marketing and that side of it, then, maybe eventually you'd want to go after a value added producer grant. But one of the questions I get a lot from farmers is that they'll hear about a specific grant and get really excited about it. But I guess my advice is to not try and make your project fit into a grant that it doesn't fit into. So
Yeah.
hopefully tonight there'll be a couple that kind of jump out at you and align with your interests. So don't try and go after every grant just for fun. Okay, I think the next few ones I have in my slideshow are foundation grants. And I spent the last couple days researching these. So if you guys have questions on these ones specifically, hopefully I will be a little better suited to answer them. The first grant I want to go over here in this category is the National Young Farmer Coalition Grant Program. This program is pretty unique in that it is pretty flexible, and there was, from what I could tell, not a lot of restrictions around specific things you can and can't do. They're geared toward young farmers, so that is anyone between the ages of 18 to 40, and the funding is for what they call livelihood farmers and ranchers. So that is someone who is planning to make a living off of the farm. You don't necessarily have to be fully dependent on farm income, but you should be planning to move into farming as a career. And they're really geared toward helping young farmers get into that career side of it and overcome obstacles around making farming a full-time position for you. So it's kind of unique in that sense. Grants are up to $5,000 and there is no match for this. So that's nice as well. And this is a newer one, but applications are usually accepted annually in January. And there were kind of two categories for this one. And the first one is, let me pull it up here. Yeah, okay, so some examples. Funds can go toward purchasing a new piece of equipment, covering operating costs, such as seeds and compost, which is pretty unique for a grant, building new infrastructure, attending a farmer training, hiring additional farm labor, or even covering personal finances that stand in the way of farm success, such as childcare, housing, or student loan payments. So very flexible, maybe the most flexible that I had come across. Funds, once awarded, can also be used to match other grants. So that is something to keep in mind too. Any questions about this one? Let me share the website really quickly. So the link in the slides will take you to this page here, which is their kind of landing page for this program. And they'll talk through it here. Again, it sounds like it's a little more competitive, but it is very flexible. And you can see past grant recipients here. Another thing that I noticed is that they have a commitment to representing large geographic locations, and no one from North Dakota has ever gotten this. So something to keep in mind if they are trying to represent the entire country. No one from North Dakota has been awarded this grant before. So something that is kind of exciting. Okay, I will pause here. See if there's questions.
I don't have a question, but I did apply for this grant last year, and even though I didn't get it, they still sent out an email to me giving me promo codes and discount codes and things like that that I could use throughout the entire year, which is really cool. Just another bonus for this one too.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Were they promo codes that places you could shop at?
Yeah, it was like seed companies. I think there was Johnny's on there, tool companies, just like little things that they partner with. I'm sure companies that donate money to the corporation itself. I'm sure that's how they do it. But it was a full like 2 pages long worth of companies, which is really cool.
That's awesome.
Okay. I am going to move on to a another foundation grant. This one is the American Farmland Trust Grant Program. This is also a newer one. I think it's only a couple years old. And I learned about this actually from Jen Skoog, who is pictured in the slide, who was just awarded it for the 2022 to 2023 season. So we'll definitely be following up with her about her experience and her project. But the purpose of this grant is to improve farm viability. So I guess there's 3 categories. The first one is to improve farm viability. The second is to access, transfer, or permanently protect farmland. And the third is to adopt regenerative agricultural practices. Katie, I thought of you when you mentioned that you're looking for permanent land because funds. Oh, Katie says, I have received this grant. Okay. For 2 movable caterpillar tunnels. It was very easy to apply for. Okay. Awesome. Well, you already got the grant. I was going to say that part of the allowable activities was paying for like an attorney or technical assistance in purchasing farmland. So it's another kind of unique one that I hadn't seen in other programs. Yes, and like Katie said, from what I could tell, the application process was pretty streamlined and would be less of an undertaking than like a larger federal or even state grant. And its projects are up to $5,000 with no match required. And then normally they had been accepted annually in November and then would be awarded for the following growing season. And I will just double check that they had some activities listed that I want to go over here too. Yeah, so professional services, hiring an attorney to write a lease, paying transaction costs associated with securing land. The second one is equipment and infrastructure, so things that would allow you to improve soil health or enhance crop quality, and then making improvements to increase marketing and sales. So that's does anyone have questions on this one, American Farmland Trust? Okay, I have one more foundation grant. This is the Food Animal Concerns Trust. So this one is for livestock producers. It funds pasture improvements to increase the number of animals that are raised on humane farms. So they're really focused on safe, healthy, humane animals. And so it's really geared toward projects that are going to be giving your farm animals a better life. These are up to $3,000 for the project, and there is no match. And applications are usually accepted in January. There's a lot of restrictions on this one. There are only certain animals that are eligible for it, and your funds can't go toward purchasing animals. They can't go toward equipment for slaughter. They're really focused on either transitioning your animals to pasture or improving the conditions during their lifespan. They also can't, if you're a vegetable producer who wants to go into livestock or animal production, you are not eligible for that. It has to be someone who already has the animals. So just something to keep in mind. It's really focused on improving the existing animals' life quality while they are on your farm. And then some of the projects that they said are eligible. Yes, hang on. Mary, you had a question.
You said not all animals. Are chickens a part of that?
Chickens are, I have it up. So I guess it is beef, bison, broiler chickens, dairy cows, goats, pigs, sheep, and turkeys.
Thank you.
But it was not no birds, alpacas, horses, rabbits, those were not allowed. Any raw milk operations are not allowed. So just something to keep in mind if you are interested in going after this grant, to make sure that it your project would fit into it. So they can go toward, if you're pursuing an animal welfare certification, and there are a few different options that can go toward costs and getting up to meet those requirements. They can help you expand your pasture area, or go toward the quality of your pasture. So any other questions on this? The website was a little sparse, but I found some good other resources, and I can share those with anyone who is interested in them.
We also have a connection with 2 of their staff members, and I believe Glenn Philbrick, I'm not certain, but I think he may have received this grant because Glenn was the one that connected us with FACT. I think the Mobbies are familiar with FACT as well. So we can help you connect.
That is the last grant that I had in my presentation. So
can we take a 5-minute break?
That's what I was gonna say. It's about time for a break. Maybe we can 7:02. Maybe we just want to come back at 7:10. Okay. All right. I will encourage you guys to go take a walk, let the dog out, whatever you need to do, and we'll come back here at 7:10. Okay, awesome. Great, I see Mary and Katie are back. I'll wait just another minute. Stephanie, did you want to go over your case study of the value-added producer grant, or?
Well, so we should at least briefly touch on loans. We should.
I forgot about loans. Okay.
We should go over Mary's question about SAMs and DUNs and that case study on the value-added producer grant. So let's briefly touch on loans and then do the case study, and then we'll talk about SAMs and DUNs at the end. So welcome back. So I know everyone is most excited about grants, but loans are also very useful as well. And often I think farmers end up having to pair grants and loans and piece them together into a full package to fund their business. There are so many different loans and with different intricacies that it wasn't possible to just create one list for you all like we did with the grants. What we have is I've gotten a bunch of resource lists from our partners at USDA Rural Development, small business development centers, Service Basin Planning Council, and the other regional planning councils. And so we've uploaded those, and Felicity can make those available. So I'll just kind of give you an overview of and I have less experience. I have not written a loan for my business like I've done a lot of grant writing, so I'm very familiar there. With loans, I'm less familiar, but we build partnerships exactly so that we can refer you to other people who do have the expertise. So this is a document I got from our friends at USDA Rural Development. Some of you may have met Jill Hawkinson or Denise Sundin. They also exist to help you succeed, and they're wonderful to work with. So I don't know the ins and outs of all of these. What I want you to take away from this is simply that there are lots of resources out there. And then the process would be, you would come to us, we would sit down, we would, outline your goals, your financials, how much money do you need? And then we would start connecting you with folks like Mary Beth Votava at the Small Business Development Center, or someone at Rural Development who can help us identify which loan fund would be best suited for you. It also depends on where you live. So these are all something called IRP. Then there's revolving loan funds under USDA Rural Development's RBEG and RBDG. So if you happen to live in Animos, they have a revolving loan fund set up just for their community, or Cavalier County. Mary, you are near, are you still in Burleigh County, Mary? I know you're north of Bismarck.
Yes, still in Burleigh.
So Lewis and Clark Regional Development Council would be a resource for you. Katie, you're in Regent, right? I think that would be Roosevelt Custer Regional Council. And I can't see the chat for some reason. So
Yes, I think you're right.
There are also other revolving loan funds through electric cooperatives, and then something called RMAP. So again, although this is complicated, the staff at Rural Development and Small Business Development Centers are there for the very reason of helping you navigate these things. So there are 8 different regional planning councils around the state. So you can find the one that's closest to where you live that serves you. There are rural electric cooperatives all over the state, and telephone exchange areas. So there was also, again, this was an email, so I copied it into Google Docs, and this is uploaded to that drive that Felicity will share with you. So this was Denise Sundin shared a bunch of these resources. Rural Energy for America program. They have both a grant and a guaranteed loan option. So if you're thinking about putting solar on your farm or wind or geothermal, they can help with some of the costs of that. And we have a partner through our North Dakota Local Food Development Alliance, Ellen, who, if you're interested in solar, she works with a company that can help with that, and they help write these REAP grants. Your Small Business Development Center. We are building strong relationships with the small business development centers all over the state. They're fantastic. I think Robert can attest to that. He's worked closely with Mary Beth Botava at the Minot Small Business Development Center, and they can help. They can take a look at your business plan. They can provide advice. They can help you find funding.
Mary Beth is joining us for next week's class. So if you guys have more questions specifically on kind of the ins and outs of finding a loan through a rural development center and what that process looks like, she will be able to answer those questions about that and kind of locating your center near you. So.
And then I believe Jill Hawkinson put this together. This is a list of financial resources for small scale farming enterprises in North Dakota. Be aware a few of these links have, you know, a few of them are a little bit outdated, but just one or two. It was just the farms one had some old info on it. There's links to USDA resources. Bank of North Dakota has some loan funds. Beginning farmer shadow loan. And again, you're a beginning farmer up until your 10th year of farming. So again, the main idea I want you to take away is that there are a lot of resources out there, and then come back to us and we'll help you find the ones that are specifically best suited to your enterprise. And then the last resource was that here we go. There's a USDA Federal Entrepreneurship Guide, which is linked in this other document, but the link is broken. So resources for rural entrepreneurs. And there's a lot of great stuff here as well. And that Felicity will make sure you get that. Are there any questions about loans? Oh, and the one loan program I didn't mention was farms. We have a loan program, micro loans up to $7,500, variable interest rate, 5 to 7%, depending. And the information is at farms.org/grow. And honestly, what is likely to happen is if you submit a loan application to us, we're going to sit you down and we're going to first start with our one-on-one technical assistance program. So we're going to talk with you about the big picture of your farm and not just give you a farms loan, but also help connect you to other financing resources like loans and grants. And then the farms loan will fill in any gaps.
And we are working to compile some of these many resources into a large resource list. So right now there are multiple lists and some overlap between them. So I will give all of that to you so that you can access it, but just know that we're working on kind of streamlining this into something a little more accessible for you guys. So that's on the horizon.
I just remembered there was one grant that we didn't cover, and I don't know, maybe you already talked with Mary. Mary, do you know if the Farmers Market and Growers Association is still doing small grants?
Yes, we are. I'd be glad to talk about that. They are currently being updated so that they are consistent. They will be uploaded to the website, which is just ndfmga.org. Goal was April 1st. I don't think we hit that mark, but they will be up there very shortly. If you are a member of a market and they pay their dues, or if you want to pay your dues, which is very cheap, you are eligible for these grants. There is one for the market itself. If you are a member of the market or the board and just want to do some things, there is that for, and really it's for media, for advertising, for marketing, for materials. I think one year we bought cones with the Capital Farmers Market. We needed to be safer where we were, so we have cones and we got some other safety equipment. There is one if you are a farmers market person and in your first 2 years, new vendors, it helps buy tents and tables and all of those things that you find that you need to purchase. And then there's a youth grant if you have a youth vendor, and a youth group if you are in charge of 4-H leader, church group, and you're helping a group of students or a group of young people get started. And then the last one, which is fairly new, is the Farm to School grant, which helps you buy things like extra tubs or pays for the extra gas that you use to get your produce to the school or food bank, I think, either way. So yes, if you want to do any kinds of farmers market things, please consider applying for that. And it's first come, first serve.
And we will share that out as soon as they're up. So you'll see that on, I'm sure, Farms' social media and emails and all of that too.
And some of you might ask, Farms has also made small grants. Last year we had a small grant program in honor of Holly Mobby, who was formerly the director of Farmers Market and Growers Association, and just an incredible, part of our local foods community, and who has passed away. And then the year before that, we had a small grant program for recovering the plastic on your high tunnel because we'd had a bad freeze. At present, we don't have plans to do a grant program this year, but we may in the future. It just always depends on what our board decides our priorities are for that year. Any other questions? Okay. So I went digging in my files and I found my value-added producer grant application. And I just thought I could walk you through, my process. So I took Farm Beginnings as a student in 2013. I think we finished in spring of 2014. That fall, I started selling bread at the Botno Farmers Market and decided I liked that and launched my business, Meadowlark Granary. So I was taking the wheat that my dad grew on our family farm near Drake. I was cleaning it, milling it into flour, baking bread, and marketing bread and baking mixes at the farmers market. And sometimes I would be hired to do little catering things for meetings and things. So I wrote my value added producer grant about a year later, would have been spring of 2015. And so I will show you my application and kind of talk about the process of doing that. Okay. So this is the value added producer grant toolkit that you are provided that you fill out. In addition, you also have to fill out an SF-424, which is a federal form, which is an application for federal assistance, and a budget form. You have to complete and sign these assurances and make sure you don't have a felony conviction and you're not delinquent on taxes. And then there's a whole bunch of other papers you have to sign. And so I did have to apply for a DUNS number, and I had to apply for an EIN number, and we'll talk about that at the end. So I also had to register through SAM. I can't remember if I had to apply through grants.gov. I believe at this time I had to print everything out and drive it down to Bismarck to deliver it to the Rural Development Office in person, because I could have mailed it. So I requested $24,000, which meant that I had to match that with $24,000 of my own. At this point, I don't know if the rules have changed. At this point, you were allowed to use in kind for some of your match. So I was able to use a small amount of my time and the value of the wheat. However, at something like $4 a bushel, the value of the wheat that I was milling came out to like $400 and some dollars. I had to provide a summary. Now I'll go through this really quickly because as I said, this is 41 pages. So I applied as an independent producer. I was seeking working capital in the amount of $24,000, and I stated that I was going to hire a production assistant and professional support for packaging, labeling, and marketing of whole wheat flour, baking mixes, breads, and bread products. I do live in Bottineau County, which is in the Konak REAP zone. I don't recall if that was stated as a priority area in this grant, but I figured it couldn't hurt to mention it. And our farm is in Sheridan County, which is a persistent poverty USDA strike force county. So I was adding value. I had to identify how much. That was at least 80 bushels that I said I would use. And it was a 27-month project. So October 1st, 2015 through December 31st, 2017. My goals were to increase my customer base and increase my revenue. So I had to be able to identify my average number of customers per month so that I could show that the grant was resulting in an increase. Verify a bunch of things, verify that I was eligible, so I had to verify that I produced the commodity and was an independent producer. And I listed my parents because technically the farm is theirs and the grain is being produced on their farm. So my commodity was, you have to identify the raw commodity that is your input, in my case, hard red spring wheat, and the value added product that would result. And then I calculated the total value added. So $5.59 a bushel, it's $447 for 80 bushels. But when you add value to it, it comes out to $170.50 a bushel for 80 bushels. So I was changing the physical state. I had to describe how I was adding value and quantify the local sales and marketing results in added value to the product. So I described my marketing plan. So in this case, this is where the marketing plan and your whole farm plan comes into play. Customer base. So, it'd be helpful if in your marketing plan, you've identified your customers, and how you'll reach them. And in my case, I had a really supportive, the Botno Economic Development Council, Botno EDC, had a wonderful director at that time. And I had reached out to her for assistance, and she helped me with a lot of things. She hooked me up with an accountant who helped me with some of my bookkeeping. And then what was really wonderful was the Botno EDC set up a tasting event for me. So this helped me promote my product. It helped me get the word out. And so we did this event where I set up at the tech center downtown, and people got to come and taste my breads, and we did a little survey. So people told me which products they liked best and were most likely to purchase. So that gave me some information that I was able to use to support my grant application. And I could show that I had done some market research. Use of funds. And then you have to write a work plan narrative. And then a work plan. So I created this table outlining all of the things that I intended to do, who was responsible, and the budget item. So paying a production assistant, I intended to do that with grant funds. I was using my own time as in-kind match. The value of the wheat was match. My rent for my production kitchen, I was using as cash match. My liability insurance, that was match. I intended to hire a graphic designer with the grant. So a mixture of, I had to identify all of the activities and items and their costs. So we really had to, the process of writing the grant really forced me to think through all of the aspects of my business. So I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions. I don't want to just bore you by going through the whole thing. I want to make sure this is relevant.
Keep going, Stephanie. This is good.
Okay, good. So then I had to break that down into a budget summary with my activities and their costs: production of flour, baking mixes, bread and bread products, packaging and labeling, and then marketing. So the 3 steps. And I had to, divide up both my cash match, my in-kind match, and my value-added producer requested funds among those things. And then I had to do a task budget for each one. So you can see it's very, it helps to have a very detail-oriented mind when you're writing things, and a lot of patience. And also it helps to have a well thought through, detailed whole farm plan. So I quantified my time, and I also had to document, how did I come up with $27.34 an hour? Like, nobody's paying me that. That's just like me saying my time is worth this. And so I used the Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics, occupational and wage estimates. No, that was for the production assistant. Yeah, I think I must have used that. Oh, North Dakota Workforce Intelligence. So everything I stated in here, I was documenting. The value of the wheat that was supported by, I looked up the commodity prices at the Arthur Company's grain elevator in Animus, which is where my dad used to take his grain. And then packaging and labeling. Again, I needed to look up the cost of packaging supplies. I think I probably used the Uline website to identify, 7 cartons of packaging at $200 a carton for $1,400. Labels, printing those, paying a graphic designer, purchasing bags to package my bread and my flour. And then there was my marketing budget. So let's see if there's anything else. Oh, and the other part of this grant is you have to show that you are creating jobs. So when these grants are all submitted to rural development, there's staff there that are evaluating them to determine which ones they're going to fund and which ones maybe need more work and maybe try again next year. And so they give you the evaluation criteria that they're looking for. So they want to see how many jobs are expected to be created or saved as a result of the project. Now, if I was somebody like the pasta cooperative in Carrington, they're probably creating a lot of jobs. Me, I was creating 2. But I was just honest about that. And I mentioned, I'm also contributing to my local economy by hiring these other people like the graphic designer, the web designer, and the photographer. I had to quantify my baseline of customers and the anticipated expansion. And I had to quantify a baseline of revenue to producers and an increase in revenue. And then I had to create performance evaluation criteria. In my case, I chose a target of processing 4,800 pounds of wheat, a target of 40 loyal, meaning repeat customers by project completion, and 800 first-time customers. Now, you have to be careful when you choose those criteria because you're going to have to report on those annually. And if you choose too many criteria or difficult criteria, you will regret it later. They also wanted to describe the technological feasibility of the project. Because my request was under $50,000, I didn't need a full feasibility study. But if it had been a larger project, I would have had to hire a consultant to do a feasibility study. So I wrote up a description of feasibility, talking about the product, value-added production, market research, experience and size constraints, and the potential to expand production and sales. And I described how the grant would improve my operational efficiency. Specifically, I was going to rent a kitchen, hire a production assistant. And then profitability, I had to project 4 years of expenses to show, and 4 years of income to show that the grant would help me move from startup to break even to making a profit. Now, 4 years is a pretty aggressive. I'm not sure how reasonable that is, but I did make a budget that showed that. Okay. Qualifications of project personnel. Again, I was the only real personnel. The other 3 were people that I was going to recruit. So because I didn't have a person to provide a resume for, I instead provided the qualifications that I would look for and how I would recruit those staff members. And timeline, you had to provide producer commitments, plant and harvest 10 acres of hard red spring wheat. My parents committed to let me use the land and equipment and seed. I had some end user commitments. Sue Belcom was the ED for farms back then, and she committed to purchasing bread for the August 2015 Summit on Local Economies in Bottineau, and she did, in fact. I provided caramel apple bread for snacks. I had to keep track of all of my receipts. So that's where record keeping comes in. Every craft show booth fee that I paid, I kept careful track. Here's, you know, a documentation of my time. You know, on November 6th, I spent 2 hours in administrative and marketing. 6 hours for Thanksgiving baking. I had to provide receipts for the wheat that I milled. And well, oh, I think this is it. Yes. And these detailed financial reports showing exactly how much I had spent of the grant to date. And again, this was a reimbursement grant, so you had to spend the money and then they reimbursed you. So I'm going to pause there to make sure I have time to talk about Sam's and Dunn's and see what questions you all have. How are you feeling about about grants and loans? Is this feeling like totally doable, or is this like, ooh, that's a lot, or somewhere in between?
Well, this is Mary, and it seems doable. However, Sam's and Dunn's is daunting.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where your experience would be really helpful.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, before I hop over to Sam's and Dunn's, are there any other questions?
I do have one unrelated. Well, it's a grant question.
Uh-huh.
So have you ever heard of a USA funding applications website? And the reason I'm asking is I came across it looking for grants last year and thinking about being a grant writer and all that kind of stuff. And it wants me to pay like $100 fee or something, which seems reasonable if they are truly going to offer the services that they say that they will, but nobody I know is familiar with them.
I would be very skeptical of that one. I mean, there are foundation center is a reputable one, but it does have a hefty subscription fee. So usually you can access it. Usually like a library or a university will subscribe to it, or like a nonprofit association, and then you can go there to access it. But I haven't heard of the one you're talking about, and there are a lot of disreputable
Yes.
organizations that will try to get you to pay them for things that are available for free or that you can access elsewhere for free.
That's what I was afraid of. Thanks.
And likewise, talking about Sam's and Dunn's, there are a zillion organizations that will contact you claiming to be like they'll make it look like we're from the federal government, and they'll want you to pay them like $500 to do the SAMS registration or renewal process. The SAMs and DUNs are always free, and you do not ever need to pay those people to do them. However, in terms of your time, time and energy, there is a cost there. In hours of your life that you will not get back. Now I'm trying to remember. So Mary, it's been a while since I've actually had to complete a SAMS registration or a DUNS registration, but every federal grant RFA, because I'm constantly writing federal grants to fund farms, those always have some information about SAMs and DUNS. So here we go. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. So
Stephanie, can I ask a question?
absolutely.
I work with Dave. He's with the North Dakota PAC, and he will do your SAMs for free, but he's the only one in North Dakota that does it. So when you catch him, you have all of your stuff right there. But he helps small business, and he's with the North Dakota Small Business Developmental Center. He works with Mary.
Perfect. Okay.
But he's totally free.
So I just Googled North Dakota PAC, and this looks like the Greater North Dakota Chamber PAC, supporting champions for North Dakota business.
Yes.
That is a great resource. Thank you, Robert.
You're very welcome.
Felicity and I will, do you have Dave's email address?
I do not, but I got it from Mary Beth.
Okay, we will reach out to Mary Beth and ask how we can, to make sure that we're able to connect farmers with Dave, and maybe there's other resources there. Am I sharing my screen? Yes, I am. So if you aren't able to work with Dave for some reason, maybe he's busy helping 5 other farmers, so there are 3 things. There's grants.gov, and you need to create a registration through them, because some of these applications you have to apply through their online system. Then you need to get a UEI. So it used to be called a DUNS number. About a year ago, they changed it to UEI. So we don't have DUNS numbers anymore. We have UEI numbers, and they reissued them all. Your number got, now it's got a bunch of letters in it. I had to rememorize it. So you go through sam.gov. So you go to grants.gov and then register with SAM, see applicant registration. And they walk you through the process. So first, you can look up to see if you are already registered, which you're probably not. So you start by creating grants.gov account. You are absolutely right, Mary. Their instructions are so convoluted.
Yeah,
So,
it's not friendly. I mean, you're supposed to be able to do it yourself. And so I was hoping maybe you had some tips for this group, because yeah, it's supposed to be, you're supposed to be able to do it yourself. I will say that they were responsive on the help desk, but they pretty much just refer you back to their instructions and
Yeah.
so forth. And so let me just ask questions maybe.
Yep.
And the other group, I don't want to dominate, but if you've never done this, it might be, you might have a better time just signing up now that they're not connecting the DUNS. Now you just sign up and get your unique identifier. Once I created my login, am I able to do both the North Dakota Farmers Market and Growers Association business using their identifier and using the same login? Then can I use the identifier I have for the farm to participate, or do I have to have separate logins?
Yeah, that's where I got tangled up too, because I used to be the grant writer for Dakota College at Bottineau, but I had previously worked for other nonprofits where I had written federal grants. I believe with grants.gov, you have a personal login that's attached to you, Mary, the person, the human being,
Right.
And then if you do it right, you should be able to attach any business. So you could potentially have one grants.gov login that allows you to administer Farmers Market and Growers Association if you're applying for a grant for them, and your business if you're applying for a grant for them. Because I believe I at some point have had one login where I could, the grants that I wrote for Dakota College at Bottineau and Meadowlark Granary. Although I think I made a mistake and forgot my login, and then they created a new one, and then it got very messy and frustrating.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at too, is we didn't have any information for the North Dakota Farmers Market, and I tried to explain this, and I sent the form multiple times that said, I don't have the old information. I'm the new person. This is what I know, the EIN. So SAMS is kind of my downfall. At one point, I just kind of gave up.
I can tell you you're not alone. I was in the same place when I worked for United Way of Thurston County out in Washington. They asked me to write a federal grant. They hadn't applied for like 10 years. And there's a person attached to the sam.gov account who's like the eBiz point of contact. And they will only speak to that person. Never mind that the guy was like 10 years gone and probably had passed away. They did not want to speak to me.
Yeah, I had to create letterhead for the farmers market.
Yep.
And write the letter, and I think I even had to get it notarized.
Yes, yeah, I've gone through that process too.
So when I'm in the middle of this, when any of us, the other participants, Jake or Carrie, can we call farms?
Yeah, you can call me. You can call me. Even if I can't do anything, I'll commiserate with you.
All right, thank you.
The other thing you're going to want to do is get an EIN number. So you probably glimpsed, so the SAM, there is that sam.gov, there is a checklist, but I'm not going to take your time to go through it because as we've seen, it's challenging. You'll also need to apply for an EIN number, and I can help you with that too, or we can connect you with Dave at the North Dakota PAC. I guess it is 8 o'clock, but I want to make sure any questions don't get left unanswered. Are any of you thinking about did this spark some new ideas, some new grants you might want to apply for, or maybe loan funds?
It did for me. I hope Jake speaks up as well.
Yeah, I definitely got introduced to a couple new grants and a few of the ones that I've seen before in the past. I like how you said, like, probably not the best idea to apply for these grants right now to get it for this growing season, but to kind of prolong it into next year, which I think I'm going to take that wholeheartedly, and kind of moving forward on taking out a loan for this season, and then going from there and seeing what happens.
Wonderful.
And you guys in the past have been really good about Facebooking when you see those opportunities. So really appreciate that, especially now that I'm not in the loop with USDA. I need to sign up for those newsletter thing on my email again. So I hope you continue doing that. That is extremely helpful.
We will do our best. Whenever I see stuff, I shoot it over to Shelby and then she gets it up right away. So
Yes, and if you guys come across anything, like there are a couple I learned about from farmers who got them. So share them with us, and we want to share your success, but we'll also probably follow up with questions about the process and how it went. So
yeah.
This was good. This was absolutely the module that I was looking forward to for the whole workshop. And you were great. Really, really very helpful.
Oh, good.
I'm going to quickly just share the learning portal. I know Robert and Katie, you guys don't have access to this, but I kind of dumped a lot on this week. Some of these are things we talked about. Some of them we maybe referenced but didn't share. And there's a couple more I still need to upload. But these are all just resources that I either have gotten from USDA agents, or we found, downloaded them and kind of compiled them. So I'm linking to these here. My slides and Stephanie's slides are here. And under the resources, grants and loans, we have this document from Jill Hawkinson that Stephanie brought up. So I'll continue to update that, but just so that people who are in the class right now know where that is, and I can share this out to the rest of the participants tonight. If you're looking for something specific, just let me know if I didn't get that to you. If you are specifically interested in one of these grants, we might have some more material that we can share. So just wanted to add that. All right. Well, we are past 8 p.m., so I will let you guys go, but thank you everyone for being here. And feel free to reach out to Farms at any time for any questions on loans or grants or financing. So, all right, everyone, have a good night.
Have a good night. It was so fun to see you all.